believe it is recording now. So hi everyone, welcome to our Belmont and Beyond WellCore program, Assessing Company Culture. If you are interested in receiving WellCore credit for this event, you will need to complete the quiz in the self-paced event section of the WellCore course following this event. So for those of you I have not met yet, my name is Danielle Bestfeld and I'm the recruitment coordinator in the Office of Career and Professional Development here at Belmont. And today we're going to talk about company culture. So company culture and the idea of fit are important components to an employee's experience within an organization. But many times you don't know the culture of the company until you are fully immersed in it. So while today's conversation will not fix the problem of full transparency into a company's culture prior to hire, it will hopefully provide some tools that will help assess the culture of a company prior to being employed there. So before we officially begin, I'd like to briefly share our goals for Belmont and Beyond. These programs are designed to equip you with the skills needed for success in the workplace. So what you see on the screen are the top 8 skills most desired by employers, and today's conversation is considered part of career management. So career management is important to both securing and succeeding in career opportunities. So today's conversation will focus more on the securing aspect of career management, but this skill that we're talking about today, assessing company culture, is important to hone while working within a position as well. So just a quick roadmap for what we're going to cover today. We will start off by talking about what is company culture, and then we'll discuss the ideas of culture fit, culture add, and value fit. And then we'll spend a good chunk of the conversation talking through some tools to assess company culture that you can take with you after today. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps, including how to get that WellCore credit. So just starting off with culture and fit. So I'll be launching this video, which will talk through what is company culture.
A company's culture is hugely important, in my opinion. You know, you can work anywhere, but it's all about the people you surround yourself with, because you get to spend every day with these people. And so you want to be around people that have that same value system and want to be in a place where you love to come into the office every day and you love the, the water cooler conversation with people, because we are all in a joint mission together and you're all really excited about the same things.
There are a couple tools out there that will be able to assist you. Glassdoor is a great tool, right? This is a platform in which individuals can stipulate how much they make, stipulate their progression in the firm, stipulate how their interview was. Allows you to get a sense of people's feedback of how they feel about the company that they're working for.
You can love what you're doing. I could love to sell Heineken products, but if I actually got into the company and the culture was one of individualism, not working together, not supportive, then it doesn't matter how much I was passionate about selling that product or how good I could be at it if the culture itself that is supposed to support you is not strong. So I would say it's definitely probably top 2 or 3 when I've thought about working for other companies.
The culture of how they treat their people is directly correlated to how they'll treat you if you were to work for them. So as you get older, it becomes more important to think about that. But I would still say in your 20s, you obviously want to be first and foremost employed at the end of the day. And then from there, take that experience to leverage it and then be able to find a place, if it's not the one you're at, that will give you the happiness as well.
You spend so much time with these people on a day-to-day basis that it's really important that you have that feeling of satisfaction when you walk away from the day at the end of the day, to be able to make a connection with not only your direct supervisor, but also your peer group that you'll be working with.
So company culture matters a lot, company size, even just what do you wear every day, what are the work hours, what's the vacation policy. In a job interview, it's a two-way interview, same with the school. In a school interview that you're applying to, they're saying, will you fit in here? But you're also saying, will I fit in here? Do I want to be here?
The more you can do to gather as much information as possible before you go in, do that. I mean, if you have someone who you know there, really grill them, really ask, what is your day-to-day like? What is the best part of the job? What is the most challenging part of the job? Do you like it? Do you want to be there in 5 years? You know, ask hard questions, because people will try to sugarcoat things, people will try to say things and make organizations seem really good, but you want to get honest answers about the truth of what's happening in any organization, and really take advantage of every resource you can, whether it's people, whether it's online, whether it's reviews. Glassdoor is a great resource. If I had looked at Glassdoor for the job that I'd worked previously before I took the job, I probably wouldn't have taken the job.
So for both my visual processors and those who want a more defined explanation, company culture is a set of shared norms, beliefs, values, expectations, and assumptions that are held by most members of an organization, and it's amplified by the behaviors of the leaders. It is often subconsciously coded and is learned through observing patterns of behavior, organizational practices, and communication styles. If you ask someone outright, what is the culture of your organization, people will usually pause because it's so ingrained in their day-to-day life that they cannot answer as easily as if you were to say, what's your company's vacation policy, or what are your hours that you're open? So members of the organization who can assimilate or adapt to the culture tend to thrive, while others who are unable to or who choose not to adapt may feel left out, unwelcomed, or undervalued, which is otherwise known as being not a good fit. So then what is fit? Fit means that an employee's beliefs and behaviors are in alignment with their employer's core values and the organization's culture. It has been described as finding someone you would not mind being stuck at the airport with. And so just before we continue, I do have a quick poll to ask of you all. So if you were a hiring manager and you could only hire someone based on one of these things, which would it be? Would it be skills relevant to the position, the potential for that person to really be a superstar in that company, or would it be a good cultural fit? Give a few more seconds. All right, go ahead and end that poll. All right, we have a mixed bag, but it does seem that 64% of you all say good cultural fit, 20% of you all say skills relevant to the position, and 16% say potential to be a superstar. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. That will come up in just a few slides, but I just wanted to get a quick sense of the people in the room. So in theory, the idea of fit makes sense. Job seekers want to work in a place where they feel supported and challenged, but also able to thrive. And so it makes sense that you would want to look for that. But it can also be and has been used as a way to justify biased hiring or more frequently non-hiring decisions. So when we talk about fit, people that praise fit or think that fit is good will focus on using fit to make hiring decisions. So we're looking for someone that will fit in, that will get along, etc. However, it is more commonly used to justify not hiring somebody. So if you look at justification notes or reviews, it is more likely that you will see fit mentioned in we did not choose to hire candidate X than in we did choose to hire candidate Y. So with most things, it's complicated. As you saw in the video at the beginning of the presentation, the interviewees had a varying response to the idea of fit. So like the first person in the video mentioned, we want to make sure the people that work there get along, like we're spending 40 plus hours a week together. Why would you want to be in a place where you have nothing in common with anyone else? So the intent behind using fit as a justification for non-hiring is not malicious. They're not trying to exclude people. They think that, okay, well, if this person wouldn't fit in with everyone else, they wouldn't enjoy working here. And fit is very ingrained in our society, and many see it as an almost progressive approach to hiring. So we're moving beyond looking at just those skills, and we're looking at the whole person. However, the impact of not hiring based on fit is still harmful, both to the job seekers and to the overall organization. So just a few ways that there can be a negative impact of non-hiring based on cultural fit. It can limit opportunities for entry into a new field. If you have the skills, you have the relevant degree, for all intents and purposes, you would make sense in that position, but you don't fit, then that can limit the ability for you to get into that first or second role. Even for people who are in those positions, it can limit opportunities for advancement. If you are part of a company where the culture is every day, everyone eats lunch together, but you're going back to school, so you need to spend your lunch studying, or you have a family member that you talk to on the phone, or you have a side hustle, and you're not able to participate in that component of company culture, even though it does not relate to or impact your performance in your actual job, when it comes time for advancement or promotions, the idea of you not being a good cultural fit or a good community member could come back and negatively impact you. This ultimately leads to people feeling unable to bring their authentic selves into the workplace, which can lead to behaviors like code switching or masking, which can be really draining on top of normal pressures of the job. And that can also lead to people settling for complacency. Why would I want to give 110% if I'm not going to be recognized, or if my diverse approach is not going to be appreciated? Which then ultimately has a negative impact on the organization, because it leads to creative homogeneity. There are less ideas, less creativity in the company, which can lead organizational leaders to be overconfident when making decisions, or it could also lead to stagnation. You're not coming up with new ideas, you're not growing, you're not expanding. And there have been studies found out of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania that more diverse teams outperform less diverse teams in problem-solving tasks. So if you have this creative homogeneity and you have a less diverse team because you're not hiring based on fit, then you will have lower team problem-solving performance. So how can we avoid this heavy reliance on cultural fit? We know culture is important. We know that people will have these perceptions and want people to make sense in their organization. So Adam Grant from the Wharton School recommends for looking for cultural add instead of cultural fit.
Just a quick gut check in the room. When you look at research on Silicon Valley founders, you'll see that they tend to have 3 different blueprints for what they like to hire on. Some say I put skills first. My top priority is I've got a job description and I want to know if you can do that stuff. Second say, yeah, it's nice to have people who can do great things today, but it's more important to know what's the ceiling on your potential. And they try to hire stars who have a lot of learning agility or just raw intelligence. And then the third approach is culture fit. To say like, yeah, I want skills and I want stars, but to me that's a non-starter if you do not subscribe to our values. So of course you want all these things, but if you have to choose one, which is most important? Let's get a vote. How many of you put skills first? No one, okay. We're gonna have a bunch of incompetent startups. How many of you put stars first? And how many of you culture fit first? All right, so again, study done right here at Stanford, led by Jim Barron and Mike Hannon. What they show is that the firms where founders say culture fit is my top priority are significantly less likely to fail. Significantly. And I wanted to quantify that, but in the study, we're looking at about 200 startups in this case. 0% was the failure rate for the culture fit firms. And then not only were they less likely to fail, they were more likely to IPO too. And it's easy to figure out why, right? When you have culture fit, everybody subscribes to the same values, they believe in the same mission, and they are uniquely motivated because there's nowhere else they would possibly want to work. And so they end up doing great things. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to save the company. Except, after they go public, the ones that hire on culture fit grow at the slowest rates when you track measures like annual market capitalization. And so what got you there doesn't get you here. Culture fit seems to be good early, but dangerous late. Why? Well, I think over time, culture fit sort of turns. Early on, you don't worry about its negative effects as much because you usually have a disruptive idea and you're trying to do something original and you need to be aligned on that. But as you grow, now you're dealing with disruption from the outside and the world is changing and you have to be able to adapt. And culture fit is code for hiring a bunch of people who think the same way I do. And it leads to groupthink and weeds out diversity of thought. So IDEO has a great solution to this. I think you all know them as the world's greatest design firm. When they started tackling this problem, they realized that instead of hiring on culture fit, they should hire on cultural contribution. So instead of asking, what is our culture about, and bringing in people who live those values, they ask what's missing from our culture. And then they try to bring in people who will enrich it and stretch it. So they have a lot of great design thinkers, right? Many of whom come out of the D School here. And eventually they realize, like, we need more than just design thinkers. Like one of our challenges is if we're gonna go build a mouse for Apple or a new shopping cart in a grocery store, we have to learn about a very, very foreign environment very quickly. Who's good at that? And they say anthropologists, that's what they do for a living. Like they go into foreign cultures and then they try to make sense of it. And they start hiring anthropologists and they're like, this is amazing, we should only hire anthropologists. And then they realize they're falling into the same trap again. So they say, all right, well, how do we diversify again? Well, once you understand a new world, you've got to translate that understanding back to help your designers get it and also your clients. And they say that's a storytelling skill. So now they start hiring more screenwriters and journalists. And again, like it's tempting, we only want this kind of person. And the moment you find a skill or a background that you think is uniquely great, that's the moment that you need to think again about what else is missing from your culture. And that seems to be a great antidote to this culture fit problem.
So a similar idea to culture add is that of value fit, where you hire people with shared values like respect, empathy, accountability, transparency, integrity, and passion, rather than shared ways of thinking or workplace preferences or habits. So value fit and culture add put the focus on finding someone that brings something new to the table within the basic structure of the company's core values. And if they'd be fun to be stuck at the airport with too, that's an added bonus. So now that we've kind of talked about these basic building blocks of what company culture is, what culture fit, value fit, culture add, what can we do with this? So in a perfect world, all hiring teams would focus on that cultural add piece, and there would be one less thing for you to worry about when you're job seeking and interviewing. However, the idea of company culture and whether you're going to fit in or add to it is an overall important piece of the experience for a job seeker to still consider. So as was mentioned in that first video we shared today, usually the advice for people in their 20s is to just get employed, and for a lot of us, that is the goal. But understanding the culture of that initial role is important to determining if that is really just a job to get you employed, or if that's a place where you can really see yourself building your career and staying for the foreseeable future. So the rest of this conversation today is going to focus on ways that job seekers can start to assess a company's culture as an outsider and can feel more prepared for that environment that they'll walk into on the first day on the job. So the first step is knowing your priorities. So company culture covers all of these topics and many more. So before you have an interview with a company, take time to think about what things would have the biggest impact on your work life. Do you do better in a collaborative environment? Do you do better if you're being motivated by some healthy competition? Do you like to have designated tasks and expectations for how you fill your day? Or do you like to have some freedom when you're designing your day? Do you like strict work hours to make sure you're not coming in early and staying late? Or do you want the ability to kind of flex those hours? So knowing your top 3 or 4 priorities will help you be more in tune to things during your research and during your interviews that are related to these areas. And I do just want to put a quick note out there that there are some things that are priorities, such as accessibility or having a family-friendly work environment, that are related to or are directly considered protected statuses. So some of these things on the screen are easier to ask about in an interview, but for things that are considered protected statuses, that is entirely up to you to disclose to the employer, either before or after hire. So I do have just another quick poll. If any of these priorities speak to you, would make your list, or if there's something else that I didn't think about, if you want to put it in the chat, would greatly appreciate that. And if you have more than just 3 or 4, that's perfectly fine. It just helps you frame your research when you're looking into the company and getting ready for that interview. Give you a few more seconds. I think we can go ahead and end that poll. See lots of work-life balance, some creativity, flexibility, control, competition, equity, collaboration. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for sharing that. Okay. So after you've made you know what your priorities are, you have an interview scheduled, you know what employer you're talking to. So you're going to do some investigation, which you're already doing before you go into an interview anyway, but this just adds an extra layer of what else you need to look for. You can use both the employer site and sites like Glassdoor, like they mentioned a few times in that first video. So when you're looking at the employer site, you can look at the company's history, you can look at their values, you can look at employee engagement opportunities, So more and more places are including if they have affinity groups or employee resource groups or ERGs. And those are good indicators that there is a diverse population working for that company. Some of the examples of different employee resource groups that I've seen just during my time looking at employers include like African American, LGBTQ+, Asian, Latinx, etc. And so a lot of these employers will put on their website in their career seeking site portion of their site that they have employee resource groups. So that's a good indication that there is at least some diversity present at the company. Some companies also have pages dedicated to their culture, and they'll throw out some of the perks of working there. So they'll say, like, we have work from home Fridays, we have half day Fridays, we have casual dress code, etc. So some of those things on that first page you can check off just by looking at that part of their website. You can also look for community partnerships. Do they have an ongoing relationship with an organization that aligns with things that you're passionate about? So some places will say that they have an ongoing donation matching with this community organization. If you're looking at a nonprofit, do their core values and their mission align with what you would want to work with? Another way that they can partner with the community is they can bring in local activists or local group leaders to speak for professional development opportunities. They can also partner with local restaurants to bring in food trucks or catered lunches for their company. You can also look at their leadership. Do they have biographies? Do they have their pictures? Can you at least see if on the surface level there is some diversity at their leadership level? Do you see someone that looks like you? If you look through their biography, do they say things that resonate with you and make you think that you might truly fit in and belong there? And so when you're looking particularly at the employer site, just keep in mind that they're choosing what to show you. But if they are hitting some of these things, in particular, like the affinity groups or the employee resource groups, they at least exist at that company. And you are always welcome to bring up those things later on during your interview. So for the sake of these next few slides, we're going to pretend that it is post-COVID. And so taking note of your surroundings would be taking place in an actual in-person setting. I do have a few examples that are more relevant for remote interviewing. But just for now, if you are in person, notice how you are received when you arrive for your interview. So if you are greeted by someone who's not conducting the interview, did they seem to know that you were coming? And when you do meet the people or the person who's interviewing you, how are you greeted? So these things matter. For the person who's greeting you, if they're not involved in the interview process, if they're caught off guard, that might mean that communication is weak between that part of the team. Obviously, context matters. So if you're entering like a multi-floor, multi-office building, that front desk person probably doesn't know the entire schedule for everyone in that building. But if you're entering a one-team space, that communication should be happening. And if you come in and there's just chaos and confusion around why you're there, that might speak to the communication on that team. For how you're greeted by the people conducting the interview, first impressions count both ways. So a lot of the times when you're job seeking, you're so focused on impressing them and that they're looking to hire and that they are looking to fill the spot and you want them to pick you, but they also want you to pick them. If they invited you for that interview, they are interested in you. And so they should be trying to make a good impression on you as well. Excuse me. And just a side note with this is be kind to everyone and you engage with during the interview process. If you extend that kindness to them, they should absolutely be extending that back to you. Furthermore, with the surroundings, assess the space. Does it look like it's open concept? Are there common areas? Do they look like they're utilized? Or are they just there for show? Does it seem like there's some chatter or some engagement going on between the people working there? Or is it pretty, everyone sticks to themselves in their own offices or their own cubicles? This matters because is this the kind of environment where you could get work done? So some people need absolute silence in order to focus. Some people need that buzz and that hum in the background. And if your role involves handling sensitive information, does it seem like there's a place to do that? Whether that's a shared, common, closed door office, everyone has their own space, etc. Now, if you are interviewing virtually for a place that will ultimately be in person, some of the things that you can ask to kind of assess those things that you can't see are what is something great about working there that I might not have seen in the setting? Or if the people that are interviewing you are also remote, you can ask, what do you miss about going into the office? Just to get a sense of what it is truly like being in person in that space. So during the actual interview, Questions during the interview that go beyond the basics of tell us about yourself or what attracted you to this position serve a few purposes. So they're either indicating the skills that are necessary for that position, like tell us about a time you took initiative, or tell us about your experience with managing budgets. They can also give you insight as to what types of problems you may have to solve. So how do you respond to frustrated clients? If you are in a non-client facing role, or if you don't have to deal with frustrated clients, they're not going to ask you this. So if you do not like handling frustrated clients, that question might be a good sign to you that maybe this would not be a good place for me to work. So some examples of questions that can be asked to assess fit. What do you do if you're not finished with work by the end of the workday? And they're looking for responses like if you're comfortable taking work home with you, if you're focused on work-life balance, if you're able to establish a natural stopping point, how do you describe your work style, and how do you evaluate success? Do you look at numbers? Do you rely on feedback from your coworkers or clients or supervisors, or are you just internally satisfied when you finish a project at the end of the day? And some examples of questions used to assess the cultural add include what is something unique you would bring to this team? And it's okay that you don't know the strengths of that specific team. You can answer about what you tend to bring to teams in general. And then for more value-driven organizations, like for example, Belmont, they can ask like, of these 5 values, which is the most important to you and why? If everyone on their team is very focused and very good at addressing values 1 through 4, and they're missing someone that's really focused and really good with value 5, and you say, this value is amazing and I'm really attracted to this, then that would be a good addition to their team. And so the interview is almost over, and they say, what questions do you have for us? And of course, because you should always have questions, here are just some that you can help use to assess the kind of culture that you would be going into. So you can ask, what's your favorite part of working for this company? Can you share a little bit about staff communication and collaboration? This can have them talk about team opportunities, team meetings, what the communication style is. Do they just pick up the phone and call each other? Do they have open door policies, etc.? Excuse me. And then when and how do people like to give and receive feedback? That's an important thing for you to know if you like to give feedback or receive feedback in the moment versus if you like to have it at set times throughout the week or throughout the month. And then what was the team's biggest challenge in the last year and what did you learn from it? You can listen for things like, are they taking responsibility for an error that happened on their end? Was teamwork involved in discussing the solution and implementing the solution, or was it a top-down process? How do you measure success? Especially if that was asked of you, it's fair game for you to ask it back to them, just to make sure that that would be a good common ground for you all. How does the company engage with the community? If the community engagement is important to you and you didn't see it present on their website, or you saw a little bit but not a lot, then you can ask, how do you engage with the community around you? What are opportunities for professional development at this organization? You can listen for things like, is there funding available? Are there internal opportunities? Do they offer it in-house? Are they scheduled fairly regularly? And do the people that you're talking to seem to know, like, have they engaged in these opportunities? So is this something that's attractive to the people that currently work there? What changes were made due to COVID-19? Are there any foresee keeping? Their ability to adapt and support their community, their employees in a different environment. Are there employee resource groups here? Once again, if that was not present on their website. What have you done to make the workplace more inclusive? And then, because everyone seemed to be very focused on work-life balance in this group, what does work-life balance look like here? And at the end of the day, when you're asking these questions of people, just like how fit and culture are coded, answers to these questions can be coded as well. So if you say, describe the environment here, describe the culture, and they say it's warm and welcoming, it can truly be warm and welcoming. But it can also be used to disguise a place that is not supportive of dissenting viewpoints or suggestions for improvement. Their answers offer one perspective, and you should always remember to think critically about the information that you see and hear during an interview and during your research. And at the end of the day, you should always just feel okay with trusting your gut. Do you feel welcome? Do you feel like the environment that you're noticing and the people that you're talking to are inclusive. And just one final note. So employers that are committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion are making adjustments to actively combat fit. And so some ways that they can do this that you as an applicant wouldn't necessarily know about include removing identifiable information from application before screening. So one of the ways that they will do this is if there is a name of a fraternity or sorority, they will take that off to prevent any assumptions of gender or racial identity. They will also use a scoring rubric similar to the one on the screen. And the people who are on the hiring committee will go through and learn what justifies a 1, 2, 3, or 0, and with limited space for comments. So you are really scoring that applicant based on that predetermined training. And then if you are unsure, or if you are between a number, or if you're between a 2 and a 3, you can put in the comments why that's the case. But that really focuses on that numbered scoring instead of that gut feeling of, I think this person would be a good fit. Now, ways that you might be able to see an employer actively combating fit are if they have a panel interview. So you can potentially see diversity on the team, if that's the portion of the team that they choose to show you. That's also them combating trying to have one person make a decision about who would be the best person to bring onto the team. Structured questions. So if they're reading from a piece of paper, which can feel very awkward and formal, but that is okay because you are in a formal conversation looking to be hired into a new position. So the structured questioning is there to make sure that everyone is getting the same questions and so that no one has an unfair advantage. And then finally, note taking. So if they're scribbling notes the entire time you're talking, I know that can make a lot of people nervous, but that's good because they're giving themselves more context so that when they go back at the end of interviewing 12 people, they can look and see, well, this person said this in their response. And they can't just say, well, I didn't like them. I don't think they were a good fit. So the more notes that they have to reference gives them a stronger justification for why they choose to ultimately hire or not hire. So just some quick resources to wrap up. Our website, Career Development, has lots of good resources for you to continue diving into this, exploring, finding good resources. Handshake, you can make an appointment with your career specialist. One of the appointment options is to do a practice interview. So you can practice asking those tough questions, you can practice a pitch, or if you're unsure of how to incorporate one of these priorities into your interview, you can ask one of our specialists and they can help you craft a pitch or craft a way to incorporate that and make sure that you will be able to thrive at the first place that you're employed. And then if you want to continue the conversation, you are always welcome to reach out to me. That's my email. Like for instance, if you would like access to the references that I used for today's presentation, or a better idea of where you can dig into this a little more. And if y'all have any questions.
Yeah, I just had a question, kind of from the perspective of maybe an entrepreneur or maybe a department-specific perspective. What advice would you have on building a strong company culture kind of from scratch?
That is a really good question. There are a few tools. The name of them are escaping me. Toka is one of them that has a good grid checklist that employers can walk through. And it's currently used to assess currently existing companies, but I imagine that if you're building one from the ground up, you could use that to kind of gauge as well, and making sure that you have an accessible work environment, that it's equitable, that you're not too focused one way or the other. So Toka, and I think that there are a few other ones as well, but the names are escaping me. But there are resources online that are focused on evaluating current company culture that you could craft and mold to build your own. And Rachel did put in the chat that Belmont Center for Entrepreneurship is a great resource for all students. I should say I'm fairly new to Belmont, so I'm not super familiar with all of the resources we have on campus. So I appreciate my team members helping out and putting in some things that are good resources for you all as Belmont students. And then the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville is available to students if you are a creative. Okay, and if you don't have a question right now, like I said, my email is available. I will also stick around for a few minutes after we wrap up today. You can always stick around and ask me a question. How do we access the quiz on the WellCore panel on Blackboard? Awesome. Okay, so we will do that next. So just real quick. So next week is homecoming. So on February 15th at 12 o'clock, the Homecoming Nonprofit Fair, which is just one of the wonderful homecoming events going on next week. And we will throw a link in the chat if you want to check out all of the other ways to engage during homecoming week. And then next steps for the self-paced events in WellCore portal, you will click on cultural well-being, click on assessing company culture, you will pass the quiz, and then you will complete the assessment that is emailed to you after you pass the quiz, and then you will get that WellCore credit. That quiz should be available within the next 24 hours. Thank you all so much for coming in today. I hope that you are walking away with some tools that you can use when you're assessing future company culture. Like I said, if you have any questions or want to continue the conversation, I am always here, as well as the rest of the career development team, the career specialists. You can reach out to our office or through Handshake. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.